One. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of AVD Monthly plus Nerdio. I added the plus Nerdio a couple weeks ago. I've got Greg Roberson with me. Greg, how's it going?
It's going good.
I've been to a lot of conferences of late, and then you were just mentioning one maybe in Houston. Is that where you were?
Did a conference in Houston a couple weeks ago. Just came back from some customer meetings at the Microsoft facility in New York City last week, and then I've got another one in Chicago this week.
So without telling me who the customers are, what do those conversations around Nerdio enabling AVD, what do those look like?
It's a light bulb, for a lot of customers when they see some of the capabilities that we offer. The light bulb goes off and they start realizing, wow, it's so much easier. Oh, and they're like, oh, I didn't realize you can do this, or oh, it's that simple to do this. And the ability to spread it across multiple tenants and subscriptions, just they realize the level of simplicity we add, and they just eat it up.
How often do you run into that scripting nut that likes the fact that he can do what others can't?
Not often, but I have ran into them. I did have a customer last year that had actually scripted probably 70% of what we did, except that the problem was his difficulty was having to maintain that.
Yeah, like you would think people wouldn't even want to, unless it's job security for them. Some people are hung up on that, but you would think the position they're putting their employer in, and the fact that they can't sleep at night because somebody's got to call them and ask them for help, would be enough.
Yeah, well, then, and the nice thing is we converted that particular company into a customer because we did a lot more than he was doing, and we did it a lot simpler. Plus, he was able to hand it off to others.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you use the term 70% is a lot, but that still leaves 30% that's not.
Yeah. There is a lot left in there, but and we have ended up saving him a fair amount of money on top of what he was doing before. But he was just grateful, to be quite honest with you. He had not heard of Nerdio, and when it was all said and done, he was super excited to have us.
Okay, so as usual, our number one topic we cover is the updates, what's new in Azure Virtual Desktop. Let's do this real quick because I ran into this conversation last week. There's just so many people still that don't understand the difference between enterprise Windows, client OS, multi-session potentially in Azure versus what AVD is, the Azure Virtual Desktop platform brokering management solution, mostly done through PowerShell. Can you, like, in a single paragraph, explain those two things that get always called AVD, but you have to pull them apart to understand really, okay, what do I need to help make this one or that one work?
So one of the difficult things to kind of get across is AVD as a platform, right, is effectively, very simply put, that old school RDP infrastructure that you would have had within your own environment with brokers and gateways and all those devices that you were having to manually manage, right? AVD takes that and puts it in as a service, which is free, that they manage for you. Mm-hmm. And then, the virtual desktop is really just nothing more than the customized operating system where, for a lack of a better phrase, they took the terminal services code out of server and added it to a special version of Windows 10 and a license management on the backside that's kind of separated out, so you don't have to worry about that, to make life a lot simpler.
Yeah. That you made me think about it, and here's how I think I would paraphrase it. AVD, the platform, is the entitlement to broker to that Azure Virtual Desktop that you have the right to run.
Correct.
Yeah, I like that. I might start using that one. But it took your words to make me translate it into something simple like that. I'll see if I can remember it next week.
Glad I could help out.
All right, so this is the September 2022 update, single sign-on and passwordless authentication now in public preview. Single sign-on and passwordless. Is this one thing we're talking about, or is this two things we're talking about?
It's essentially the same thing.
Okay. So what does this do for me?
So that's generally going to give you, more of a single sign-on capability or feel. They're doing some things on the back end inside of Windows to provide that support, but it reduces the number of times you got to log in.
So if I'm running the client, the AVD client, and I've already authenticated in my domain, now I'm hitting my environment, it's going to allow me to take those credentials, pass it through, and then launch that desktop. Is that what I'm doing?
That is accurate, I believe. Yes.
And that's what obviously people are going to want that, and especially in the thin client computing worlds where they're expecting a seamless solution.
Now, keep in mind that is specifically Azure Active Directory based single sign-on, right? Yeah. That doesn't necessarily extend to on-premise AD.
So you'd have to sync your on-premise AD up to Azure Active Directory, and at that point it should work. Or is it going to be
well, you have to do that. You have to do that now, but I believe this is just for Azure AD joined only, not hybrid joined. I'd have to research that a little more. That's I haven't actually looked into that as of yet in detail.
You're talking about the machine account would have to be an Azure Active Directory identity object.
Correct.
And then the user would have to be too, I assume.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Next one says connection graphics data logs for Azure Virtual Desktop now in public preview.
Yeah, to be honest with you, Andy, I haven't looked at some of the output or updates from the Microsoft perspective. So I'm not sure I would really comment on in detail on many of these.
It says graphics data, so I have to assume that's some type of metadata.
Well, my suspicion is it's going to be more of an insights logging perspective because a lot of customers have asked for data points on graphics cards, is what I would assume.
Okay, and then it talks about the client and network that contribute to slow or choppy experiences. When you're doing this presented, delivered compute world, especially from the cloud, which might be hundreds, if not thousands of miles away for the user. We took what used to come across the little cable from our graphics card to our monitor, and now it's turned into a network protocol. And certainly we want to be able to explain when it's not performing as expected. I see multimedia redirection enhancements now in public preview. Is there any specific application that we're talking about here? Websites, remote browser apps, enhancements to media controls for better clarity and one-click tracing. Is this all about the redirection of like website content to the client so it can be rendered there and shoved back into the session?
That's possible. I'm not sure. Again, we'd probably have to get somebody from Microsoft on to comment on that. That's outside of what our product is.
Well, the good news is there's only 4 that we have to go through. So this is one that's probably close to you guys. Grouping cost by Azure Virtual Desktop host pool now in look. This is interesting. So these are the latest, and they're all 4 public previews, not actual releases.
So I suspect that that's going to be a similar feature to give some functionality within the portal that's nowhere near the level of detail that Nerdio does with our user cost attribution. It's likely something their customers have asked quite a bit for, and so as often as they do on other things, they'll provide some of that information, right? But that's
So I jumped over now to the Nerdio updates, which it looks like we're really, to get caught up, we're talking about October back into mid-September. So it's really 4.4 and 4.3 that we're going to cover, right?
4.4. We covered 4.3 last time.
Okay.
So with 4.4, we've got, I think, 11 new items.
Yeah, let's walk through. What's most important, you think?
So the capacity extender, this is a really nice option. One of the things that we found over the last 6 to 9 months there's some resource limitations for some of the hardware that's being used. So as an example, maybe you want to utilize Intel V5 processors. Well, if you're in a particular region, it may have that in zone 1 and may not have that in zone 2 or zone 3. And so what we're offering here is, hey, saying let's use, say V5. This is our primary hardware platform that we want to use. If we are unable to get that same hardware in other areas within that same region, your backup option would be, say, version 4 or even version 3. So it gives you some, rather than just simply, spitting back an error message indicating that the resources aren't currently available to deploy, we would say, set this as V5, as a backup, go to V4, as a tertiary backup, go to V3 maybe, right? So that your deployment works with those backup configurations.
And a lot of people do have that desire to run on a certain platform, I guess, like you're saying, when available, and then they go to an alternative and an alternative. At the end of the day, they want to, even though they're in somebody else's data center, they want to control their destiny.
Yes.
Is that because that's what their applications have told them they support, or is it because of personal preference, or all the above?
It's a little bit, sometimes customers just want to be on the bleeding edge, right? And so, hey, we want to deploy V5. I know Intel has been running some specials, and if you ran V5 of an Intel processor, you got some kind of benefit out of doing so. And so, there's financial incentives to do it for customers as well, and so they want to.
In this case, let's see, they're running on V3. The V3 is actually more expensive,
Exactly, and the newer versions are typically less expensive.
Is that Moore's law, or is that adoption rate? What causes that?
It could be, it could just be, the environment. Depends on, it's different every time they come out with one. Sometimes they're more, typically they are less. There's additional cost associated from a support perspective to keep the older systems in. So there's a number of factors that go into that, but absolutely customers want to generally go with the latest and greatest because they're looking for, what they hope to see is better performance.
Right. Okay. Let me let you drive us. Where do you want us to go next?
So we'll go through, there's not a whole lot of them, and each one of these, in my opinion, are really, really, really good enhancements that we've put in features. The next one is a global search bar. So this will allow you to search globally from any screen within Nerdio. So just making your life much easier from the perspective of trying to track something down. So that's a nice little enhancement. So you can do, across the board searching and take a look and find things easier.
So I guess they know that their administrators are getting old like us, and we can't remember what stuff.
Exactly.
How can they say that, as well as the current generation is used to just searching for stuff? They never structured it. They just go find it.
Yep. Our next one is going to be RBAC scopes for images. This is a nice enhancement or addition to our RBAC roles. So think about it from a perspective of maybe you have a particular organization that you have given them the ability to manage their own host pool. Now, on top of that, you're going to have an image that those individuals or that department's going to want to manage. Up until this option, those individuals had access to every single image. Now you can specify that user has access to this image or that image specifically. So you wouldn't have somebody inadvertently updating the incorrect image and kind of hosing somebody else's work product. So that's a nice addition from an RBAC role.
Yeah.
Next, we have our auto start hosts for maintenance. Love this option. I put this in a little while back. So within Azure, you have the ability to set a maintenance window for the RDP client. And when that feature came out within Azure, they offered a primary and a secondary window, which is just a little side note, is a 2-hour window. Well, Nerdio at the time didn't necessarily have an easy way to create 2 schedules to start those VMs during that maintenance window. So we typically stuck with 1. Now we have a simple checkbox. You no longer have to create a schedule. You set your maintenance window, whether it's your primary or secondary, and select the checkbox to have Nerdio automatically turn those VMs on during that maintenance window. So whenever the window starts, say 8 a.m., it'll last for 2 hours because that's the window Microsoft has provided. And so it's just a lot simpler, cleaner design from helping customers keep their agents updated, which keeps those agents from updating themselves on random basis, right? So most customers are going to want to turn this on to help streamline their deployment.
So you've got a window where you're wanting things to happen. You want to make sure all those machines are up, they get their updates, and then turn off.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our next one's going to be remote maintenance mode. This is an interesting one. It's almost like a point solution for specific situations, but I'll give you an example or 2 examples. Okay, so maybe you're doing, as a customer, remote applications, and the remote app you're sharing out is a web front end, and on the back end you have some databases. And if you take that remote app offline to do any database maintenance, your end users typically have to do a feed refresh. And what we're doing here is giving them the ability, or the administrators the ability, to put those applications in maintenance mode, provide a nice message saying, hey, this application is currently in maintenance mode, come back at a later time. So that way they can put it in maintenance mode and then go work on the database. And when they're done with the database, they can turn it back on. Alternatively, think about this. They maybe they deployed an application, and at some point down the road, that application had a massive issue. And rather than removing the application and enforcing everybody to refresh their AVD feeds for it to go away, again, you would get a message saying it's been taken offline, come back at a later date, such and such time to re-access this image or this application. And it allows some flexibility from an admin perspective to effectively offline an application without causing any undue issues with their user base. Next, we have our image association details. This is nice, informative option that we've added. So option 6 on the image association, that's effectively going to tell you what host pools that particular image is being used in. So rather than having to go and look at each host pool, you can look at it under desktop images, and we'll reference the host pools they're being deployed to.
Well, and there's been multiple times in my world where finding that relationship was what I was after.
Yes. This next one is a nice little enhancement as well. Host pool actions shortcut. To give you an example of that, when you manage host pools within Nerdio, you manage them at the host pool level. Quite often, customers will click into the host pool, and then they'll look for, how do I manage the hosts that are in this host pool, and realize that they have to go back one level to manage the host pool. So all we're doing here is literally adding the same menu item that you would have at the host pool level at the host level, so that it just makes fluidity of going through the product itself a lot simpler.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Next is we've had a number of customers ask for this domain joining Azure files with a computer account. So historically, Nerdio has joined a storage account to the domain as a service account. We've kind of stayed away from the computer account because by default, Active Directory Active Directory has those computer account passwords changed every 30 days. Now, you can certainly modify that within AD. Not everybody does, or you can certainly disable that rotation of passwords. And so if that password changes on the storage, unbeknownst to you, then your users lose access. So with this capability, as long as you're aware that you need to extend that password reset or disable it, it should offer some additional security and simplicity from a deployment perspective, requiring, quote, less permissions to join the storage because it's a computer account, not necessarily a service account.
Okay. Yeah.
Our next one is going to will be allowing desktop start actions in a grouped.
Quick question on the computer account stuff. So the computer account password changes that happen in AD, it'll just handle, like it won't matter because the computer authenticates with AD and then it can come knocking on the storage.
Right. So in a regular Windows environment, Windows OS handles that. You never really have to mess with it. Okay. In Azure, there's not a Windows server to log into and set all of that. So if that password changes, you've kind of got to go back and re-add the storage account back to the domain.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Next option will be or allow desktops start actions to be grouped. So we have an option. This is just an enhancement feature that we've added where you can turn on virtual machines. And when we do that, it's one by one. With this new option, you can define how many to turn on in one fell swoop and do them in groups. Just some added flexibility for you. Our next option is number 10, new REST API endpoint. So the ability to import MSIX image files. So this is a continuation of the integration that Nerdio has with Remo 3. And so with our partnership with Remo 3, we've written in the ability for Remo to upload MSIX images into Nerdio. And so this is just an extension since we wrote that in for them. It's now an official API that customers can use as well. So just, again, more flexibility if you want to code any of this information. Okay. And our last option is we've added access to the Visual Studio developer desktop images. So if you wanted to deploy AVD host image out of the marketplace, you're now able to select one that has Visual Studio already added to that particular image. So it's just an expansion of the images throughout the marketplace that we're allowing you to have access to.
Okay, and that would be really targeted towards developers?
It is. It is. Visual Studio is not the quickest thing to install, to be quite honest with you.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So it's nice having that option available.
Yeah, without a doubt. Okay.
And with that, the rest of that is just bug fixes and whatnot that we've done in this particular release.
Yeah. No, this is great. Greg, insight into Nerdio and the growth of the business. Are you interacting with new clients on a daily basis that are just discovering you guys?
Absolutely. I still run across customers to this day that have never heard of who we are. And thanks to a lot of our friends that we have over at Microsoft and our other partners like yourself, they are enlightened to the value we bring. And so, yes, absolutely. Every week I run across a customer that says, yeah, just never heard of you guys until we reached out to our partner and they said, oh, yeah, well, you need to talk to Nerdio all the time. Sooner or later, Nerdio will become even more ubiquitous with AVD moving forward because we've got 3+ million users under management with Nerdio today, and it's constantly growing. We're picking up much larger organizations every week.
Yeah, I have to assume that most customers in the end user compute VDI world have some semblance of the need to evaluate AVD, and then the goal would be hopefully they stumble upon what Nerdio does to eliminate the headaches.
Yes. Some of my favorite customers, to be honest with you, are those that have signed up for AVD through Microsoft and to be quite honest with you, somewhat struggled with it. Not that I'm happy they struggled with it, but really more so that they've struggled with it and it's caused them to learn it. Because when they've picked up AVD and the nuances of it, when we come on board, those tend to be very, very, very happy customers and easily see the value that we bring to their solution.
Can you adopt AVD without having the PowerShell background?
Oh yes, you can.
Without Nerdio.
Without Nerdio, absolutely. It is a lot of manual work, a lot of processes you have to put in place, a lot of things that you repeat over and over and over. That's not automated, but you absolutely can. Typically, if I have a customer that's pretty small, 20 users or something like that, I'll be unless they see the value in our management side of it. I would typically recommend they stick with the portal. And Nerdio is not free. And unless they see the value and the ease that we bring at that number of users, we obviously bring the value. It's just, can they equate that to the number of users they have, right?
Right. Well, and then the argument would be the cost savings around the control of the environment justifies the cost of the product.
It does.
And that typically should be that plus the efficiencies that are made along the way should be the answer to, I'm not willing to spend any more money. You're going to save it. Yeah, penny saves,
Right.
penny earned. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, we can save, a net save for customers in certain scenarios, anywhere from 35 to 40 users if they're using large in-series VMs. We'll more than pay for ourselves at that point to maybe 150 users that aren't doing in-series VMs, right? So there's some spread in there depending on what they're doing in their particular environment.
Hey, let me ask you, does AVD have like a community at this point? Like, I mean, community like the meetups and events going on out in the field in all the cities.
I haven't ran across that. There may be, but I have not ran across that.
I think somebody needs to start that. I need something else to do.
Sounds like something that sounds really good to go on your plate, Andy.
All right, Greg, appreciate it as always, and good to catch up about AVD as well as Nerdio. It's becoming, I don't know if you've noticed this, but the last couple of times we've done this, it's becoming more and more talking about Nerdio because the AVD stuff is slowed down to a degree. We'll see if that continues to be the trend.
Yeah, I would expect to see some major changes coming out, at least maybe somewhere in the December timeframe. If not, then maybe sometime in the June or July timeframe. They'll typically update it twice a year.
Well, let me put you on the spot here. Do you think some of that's because a lot of development's going into Windows 365 and not AVD?
Not necessarily, no, because those are two different groups, as I understand it. So, there's only so far, I guess, from a corporation perspective that they want to go, and there may be a few items here and there that they may need to add, but it's pretty much a pretty solid product at this point. It would be nice, from what I hear from customers, is to see some updates from a performance perspective in the RDP client. Right, that would be really the one thing that would be incredibly welcoming from the community abroad is maybe a little higher performance and some other options for the RDP client.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I think maybe my thoughts are they've gotten it to a point where it's a good product and they'll rely on their partners like you guys to make it what people need. And the more the merrier on the partners. They don't care. They want a platform that can be developed upon.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate it, and we'll do it again in a month.
All right.